With this here, this ain't about being flashy. This is game day, son. It's only about one thing. Getting that W. That's the only thing that matters right now. Boy, are you ready?
The past is the past, you know? It's a new day, bro. My day. Gotta do it now.
Blindside Fantasy Football back for another episode. Just like last week, we're going to switch it up a little bit and talk about some draft strategies. I'm going to go over lots of things. Standard scoring, PPR, Dynasty, auction leagues, 2 quarterback leagues, 6 points per passing touchdown, all sorts of shit going on tonight. But as always, I feel like we wouldn't be a Blindside podcast if we didn't start off with injuries, huh, Matt?
Right, actually, I'm playing hurt tonight. Got a little cold going on, so please excuse the pronunciation of some of the words, but I'm going to fight through it. We're going to make this happen.
Fits right in with the theme here.
Right.
But breaking news that we just saw before we started the podcast, Denari Alexander earlier today had a collision during training camp, and at the end of practice was seen, icing his knee and everything. Didn't seem to be that serious, but anytime we're talking Denari Alexander and his knees, that just seems to be an ongoing issue. Come to find out, though, he actually tore his ACL, which is just devastating news for me because I was so big on Denario Alexander this year. I know everybody else was big on Vincent Brown. I was huge on Alexander as long as he could stay healthy, and that was his big thing. And I guess he proved me wrong. He proved that he just isn't healthy ever. I loved him so much this year. I'm so disappointed.
You can look at it two ways. One way is you touted him big time. Now he's torn his ACL. Darn, you don't have a chance to be proven right. But if he played, maybe he was awful and you were wrong, so you can look at it that way too.
Yeah, but in the 50-50 coin flip there, I'm taking the being right part.
Yeah,
I'm right more often
I think
than
you
not,
were as well, but unfortunately we're not going to let it play out and be able to say Marcus is a genius now. So
we'll still be saying that later on some of these other picks.
Okay, all right.
So I'm not too worried about that.
What about Jordy Nelson? What happened to that?
Jordy Nelson, knee surgery today. He's going to be out the rest of the preseason. In training camp, obviously, and he's kind of questionable, I guess, right now for the Week 1 opener. I already hated him from last year. I was one of the few guys last year that owned him, and he had those couple of big games, but other than that, did nothing all year, was hurt all year.
Right.
This knee surgery, I guess, was related to a knee issue that he had back in college. So this sounds like it's an ongoing issue, and probably part of what kept him, kind of down last year. Even before this, I was so down on him this year. I think Randall Cobb is still what we all think he was. I think this might step up James Jones a little bit. Well, actually quite a bit.
Yeah, I'd say for sure.
And then Jermichael Finley a little bit.
Yeah, Jordy and your hatred for him was more on, I think, a personal level because of...
It's right there with Reggie Bush.
Reggie Bush. The way he treated you last year, you were all in on Jordy.
I think they touched me as a child. I think that's what it is. I think Jordy and Reggie, just like Uncle Jordy and Uncle Reggie, and they were just always around or something.
Well, I was kind of expecting a little bit of a bounce back year this year with Jennings gone, and obviously I was hoping he'd be past the injury issues. Like you said, he had some nagging stuff last year. I think that's what really killed him. Remember back 2 years ago, he had a pretty solid year. But I agree with you 100%. James Jones, I think, is going to take a big leap up. And I agree with Jermichael Finley as well. This is a contract year for him. He needs to, have a big year. So targets are going to have to go somewhere that Jordy would have gotten. And as you said, yeah, it's going to probably be first week that he may be back. But still, it's just scary seeing the way he was last year, always banged up, starting the year out in that same situation this year. So
I feel like we're always touting Jermichael Finley every preseason, though. Every preseason, we're always like the potential.
Well, he's a stud.
It just never happens.
Right, physical freak. You see him play out there, and it's like, I can't believe this guy's got the size he does. The problem with him really is his hands, and I don't know about his work ethic. I mean, you hear about him a lot talking shit about his quarterback. That's another big problem.
Not a smart move.
That's probably a guy you want to be friends with if you're trying to get passes thrown to you. I mean, that's just what I would do, but like you said, yeah, Jordy getting hurt, I think it is going to help Jermichael and certainly James Jones. So, as you said, we're going to be talking about some draft strategies today, so I'm going to let you kick off where we're going to go with that.
We'll start off with standard scoring. I know a lot of people don't really do a whole lot of those standard scoring leagues anymore, but we're going to go over pretty much the whole gamut of leagues, touch on a few of them, maybe some more than others. But let's talk about non-PPR leagues. Early round, what's your strategy, Matt? Do you have any sort of strategy early on in the draft?
Well, obviously getting a cog at running back is key. I'm actually one, and I think a lot of people are kind of going this route. If I can get Jimmy Graham in the second round, I'm going to take him. I think he's just such a huge advantage over any other tight end, possibly even including Gronkowski, just because of the reports out of New England about him and his injuries. I think waiting on a quarterback is a huge thing for me, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But for me, I really would like to get at least one stud running back early. I'm big on the tight end Jimmy Graham in the second round. And getting a wide receiver is huge, but there's such depth at wide receiver, I think, running back, and I'm big on the Jimmy Graham in round 2.
So, for me, I think I've kind of said this before in a few of the other podcasts. I think first 3 rounds, I'm definitely coming away with 2 running backs, if not 3. If there are 3 good running backs that I really like, then I want to come away the first 3 rounds with 3 running backs, because there's tons of wide receivers late, tons of people you can pick up, and there's always those few guys every year that kind of come out of nowhere. There's always like those Randall Cobbs last year, Victor Cruz 2 years ago,
right?
Going even further back, Miles Austin 3 years ago.
Do you agree with me as far as positions go? I think it's easiest to waiver find a wide receiver that you can
Absolutely.
plug and play.
Oh, definitely.
That's the easiest position. That's why, your idea of the 2 out of 3, possibly 3 out of 3 running backs is definitely a solid strategy to have.
Yeah, you can, like I just mentioned with the Miles Austins and Victor Cruzes, there's always that waiver wire guy that blows up and becomes a top 10 wide receiver. And I'm not saying there's going to be another one of those this year, but there's guys like that can be bye-week fill-in guys or stream-type guys where you just play the matchups. You pick up guys and throw them in there. So for me, again, it's running back heavy and early, just like a lot of people. I have to come away the first 2 rounds out of the first 3 rounds. I have to come away with at least 2 running backs. There's just no way around that. Even if I go and get a Jimmy Graham type guy, my other 2 picks then in the first 3 rounds have to be running backs, because after that 3rd round there was a huge drop off in running backs. And wide receivers right up through 7th, 8th rounds, there's still really good wide receivers to be had. So for me, it's running back heavy, early. Middle rounds, let's talk about those a little bit. I like to target, I know we're waiting on quarterback this year, but I like to target my quarterback in those middle rounds because I think there's great value because everybody is waiting. And a couple of my Fantasy League 10s that I've been doing, over and over again, I'm getting Tom Brady in the middle of the 7th round.
Yeah,
7th round. That is just crazy to me.
Well, you and I both really are big on waiting on your quarterback, but there comes a point where 6th, 7th round, if Tom Brady or a guy like him is sitting there, it's like, holy shit, I need to do it now. I can't let him pass. For me, a lot of times I'll go into a draft with a strategy, but I think the problem a lot of people make, even your strategy going in, I'm going to get 2 running backs out of the first 3 rounds. I'm going to get 3 running backs out of the first 3 rounds. That's great pre-draft, but as the drafts unfold, a lot of times I'm really about value. Whether, I'm not going to stick by I need 2 out of 3 running backs if it comes to a point where I'm drafting Lamar Miller over a guy like, I don't know, give me a Demaryius Thomas type falling to the 3rd round. That's not going to happen for me, so I'm big on value at your pick, so it's hard for me to go in with a hard-pressed strategy, although I understand that. That's really the way it is for me. But like you said, mid-round, there's a lot of stud quarterbacks that you can get mid-round. I don't think there's any reason to take a quarterback in the first 2 rounds, period. I don't care if it's Rodgers, Breeze. If it's 3rd round and Breeze or Rodgers still sitting there, I'm taking them.
Actually, I got to mention something about that. In a couple of my Fantasy League 10s that I'm in, like I've said, I've gone running back, and in the 3rd round, the running backs that I like are gone. And in the 3rd round, after the top tier of wide receivers, I can't see myself taking a Victor Cruz or a David Wilson or a Lamar Miller.
Yeah.
So in a couple
question marks.
Yeah. So in a couple of my leagues, in the 3rd round, I've taken Drew Brees.
Yep.
Because he's a solid guy, and I'd rather have a solid stud quarterback like that, a solid elite quarterback, over the Lamar Millers, the David Wilsons. the Victor Cruzes, Wes Welkers, Dwayne Bowes, all those guys.
Absolutely.
And I got to tell you, in those leagues that I've taken Drew Brees in the third round, and it kills me to say this because I'm not the type of guy that's normally going to do this, but in the 7th round, when Tom Brady's fallen to me in those drafts, I've taken Tom Brady too. Because at some point, it's just kind of like, all right, we're in the 7th round, guys. We're looking at people like Justin Blackmon, who's a question mark as he is and suspended for 4 games. Guys like Tom Brady, guys like that, or Tom Brady, and it's like, all right, I understand the concern with Tom Brady, but he's still going to get it done. It could be me and you out there catching the ball. He's going to get it done. Good. He's going to be guaranteed 30 touchdowns a year, even terrible season. That's his floor. So in the 7th round, that is awesome. And even with taking Breeze, I'm like, you know what, 7th round. This is just too crazy of a value to pass up. And I've taken him anyway. I don't recommend that. I don't ever recommend taking guys like Breeze and Brady in the same draft. But when they fall like that, you can't help yourself, even if not just to take them and trade them later.
Right. Now we're not. Don't get him wrong. He's not advocating, like he said. Getting a guy like Tom Brady in the 7th round is a pure value-based pick. That's just it's too good of a player to just let slide. But it is tough to trade quarterbacks. I think if you got a guy like Tom Brady, it's a little bit of a different story.
Guys, it's a little different.
And like you said, there's going to come a point, I think, where you're going to get some good value out of that trade that pick that you made in the 7th round there. You're going to be able to trade Tom Brady for somebody. Maybe it's the 4th, 5th weekend. Somebody needs a quarterback who they went with in the 8th, 9th round isn't cutting it. Tom Brady is a stud. We all know that. So
I got to say though, typically in the mid rounds, what I'm looking to do, we've gone over this I think in prior podcasts, but round 6 to 8, I'm looking to grab 2 quarterbacks, 2 of the high upside quarterbacks, the Kaepernicks, Russell Wilsons, RG3, those types of guys. I still don't quite put Andrew Luck in that category because he doesn't have the rushing ability that they do, even though he does rush for some touchdowns. But those are the type of guys that I'm targeting in the middle of the rounds. Is that where you're taking your quarterback, or who are you taking mid rounds? 6 to 8. What are you doing? I'm
okay even falling further than that. I would go into week 1 with Eli Manning as my starting quarterback and be okay with that. I really would. I expect a good year from Eli. I'm huge on waiting on quarterbacks. I always have been. I think there's a situation out there where you can have 2 guys like even a Flacco and Roethlisberger play the matchups week to week, and you'll be fine.
I do have to say, in one of my fantasy leagues, the 10s there that I've been doing, I did play with that a little bit. I did play with how long can I wait on a quarterback and just see what my team would turn up to be. And I got to tell you, my team was pretty stacked. I ended up with, I think in the first 9 rounds or 10 rounds before I finally went to a quarterback, my running backs were like Ray Rice, Chris Johnson, and Ryan Matthews were my top 3. And then my wide receivers were just disgusting. It was PPR, and I got like Victor Cruz and Mike Wallace and Denar Alexander prior to the news, Deshaun Jackson, Miles Austin. It was just Justin awesome. Blackmon. It was stacked. It was PPR, and I got all those guys. It was a very, very stacked team. I think even my tight end was Vernon Davis. It was ridiculous how good the rest of the team was.
Yep.
But my quarterbacks are going to be a pairing of Phillip Rivers and Carson Palmer.
I'm excited about Carson Palmer this year.
I like Carson Palmer and I like Phillip Rivers this year, but it does scare me a little bit.
Having 2 guys like that play the matchups, it's tough to say now, but I'd be surprised to see at the end of the year if you ran with 2 guys like that, how much different you'd be from the top 5 quarterbacks. I venture to guess 2 to 3 points a game, maybe.
Yeah, plus, that running back and wide receiver depth might more than make up
with a team like you just mentioned,
it's stacked.
You would be
besides quarterback,
fine.
I'm stacked.
You would be absolutely fine with those kind of quarterbacks, with that kind of team around them, for sure.
All right, so moving to late round picks, I don't know about you, Matt, but this is where I start taking flyers. This is where I start picking people that are high upside with really low floors, just people that are either going to be a top 20 guy or nothing. Just complete lottery ticket guys.
Absolutely.
I understand the people out there that feel that they have to take the Lance Moores and the Anquan Boldens and guys like that.
That's so funny you say Anquan. I was just about to use him as an example.
Yeah, those are guys that
They have no ceiling.
You know what they are. You know what they are. They're 800 to 1,000-yard guys with 6 to 8 touchdowns ish.
In their best season today.
Okay guys, but not a guy that you're starting and you're like, whoo, Anquan Bolden's going to go off this week. You know, this is the week for him. He is going to do awesome. I would much rather take flyers on guys like Stephen Hill, you know, knowing that Santonio Holmes may or may not miss a significant part of the season and knowing that he may be the number one wide receiver. Things like that. I would rather take, you know, those question mark guys like that, you know, see how it goes for the first 2-3 weeks of the year, and if they don't pan out, that's my first guy that I drop for a waiver wire guy.
Exactly what I was going to say. I'm the same exact as you on this regard. High upside, late rounds. Obviously, you're taking your kicker, your defense. I'm big on that in the last 2 rounds, but high upside guys that have the possibility to break out.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, guys like Anquan Bolden, they're not going to break out.
You know what they
know what they can do in their best season, you know, in their careers at this point. I'm going to go with the guys that, you know, have an outside shot of making top 20 in their position because of their ability and, you know, the breakout potential. So,
and I know that primarily we're talking about wide receivers here, but even running backs, I think what I look for in a running back is a guy that is a backup now, is not getting very many carries, but if the starter goes down because of injury, he's going to be the guy guaranteed 20 carries a game. You know, Bernard Pierce in Baltimore, or Bryce Brown in Philadelphia, Sean Green in Tennessee. Those types of guys that if the main guy goes down, and there's a possibility with those starters, that they fill right in and they get 20 carries, that, you know, it's not going to be like a St. Louis where even if the top guy goes down, it's going to be a platoon of guys.
Yeah, which I don't even know if there is going to be a top guy there in St. Louis. But that is one thing we should probably mention too, is make sure you're going to handcuff your star, you know, if needed. If you have a guy who's a back, if there's a guy who, like you said,
if you spend
Bryce Brown, he's a clear cut, very good running back. If McCoy goes down, if I have McCoy, I'm going to have Bryce Brown on every roster because I know if I lose McCoy, I still have him in Bryce Brown, basically.
Right, basically your first round running back. If you're taking a running back in the first round, which hopefully you are. You should be going out and getting his hand.
Depending on his backup, though, like you said, like a situation. Say Darrell Richardson wins the starting job in St. Louis.
I'm just saying. I'm saying first round running backs. I'm saying first round running backs. You got to handcuff them because you invested such a high pick in them. I mean, name a first round running back that you wouldn't draft their handcuff if you had them.
Adrian Peterson. I'm not going to draft Toby Gerhart.
I guess that's a little different.
You know, so.
That's a little different.
Arian Foster, clearly. LaShawn McCoy, yes. Jamal Charles, probably not.
Maybe not Charles.
I wouldn't handcuff him. Ray Rice, of course.
Trent Richardson, probably not.
No, exactly. So
CJ Spiller,
yes.
You would.
Absolutely. Fred Jackson is a guy who's going to get a lot of work, I think, as a backup, and a guy who it is a similar situation. Great player. I think if CJ goes down, you're still going to have almost CJ and Fred, you know, so... It brings me back a couple years ago. I had McFadden. We all know about McFadden, his question marks. I had Michael Bush on my team. When McFadden went down, I had the same production because now I didn't have a guy who was getting his touchdown vultured by Michael Bush. I just had Michael Bush, and he was every bit as good as DeMarco Murray.
You just inadvertently gave me a great draft strategy and a great team name. I think for our home league this year, I'm just going to draft guys that are huge question marks and just name the team question marks. Just everybody that. Hey, who knows? I mean, Darren McFadden, yeah, maybe, whatever. That's who I'm taking. Whatever, just.
Hey, there you go. You got the upside with a guy like Darren McFadden.
Just throw a dart at a board.
The name could work. Could use some work though. Question mark.
The question marks. Yeah.
I like you had a couple good.
Sounds kind of like sounds kind of like a superhero. The question marks. All right, so moving on to some other strategies that you may have in these types of drafts. We kind of went over. I'm a big guy on running back this year. Anything you want to add to that? I mean, I think that's been beaten to death.
No, I mean, I like the strategy. Like last year in our home league, how many running backs did you have in your roster at one point? 8?
8.
Right.
Roster 8.
I don't mind that, at all.
There's so much turnover.
Exactly. Running back is a position where there's a lot of injuries. I mean, it's the NFL. A lot of injuries happen all over the place. But if you got 8 guys on your roster and they're all guys that have some potential, of course, that's why they're on your team. I like stacking my team with running backs.
But I'm saying in the first 2 rounds, are you taking running backs first 2 rounds? Definitely.
No, I mean,
Do you see yourself
You
taking...
told me about this strategy thing, and I know everybody in the industry talks about, my strategy. I am huge on value-based picking. That's what I do.
But do you see yourself at any point in the second round taking Demaryius Thomas or Des Bryant or Julio Jones?
No.
AJ Green?
AJ Green, yes. I could see AJ
So that's your
Green.
cutoff. So you're taking Calvin,
Yep.
Brandon
Calvin,
Marshall, AJ Green.
Yes. In
Those-
the
those
top
are-
2 rounds, those are the only 3 wide receivers I could see myself possibly with.
Yeah.
And I'd also put...
And like you said earlier, no quarterbacks in the first 2
no
rounds
way.
at all.
I don't
and
care
I
if it's
totally
Aaron
agree
Rodgers
with
or
you.
Breeze. But I would put, like I said, Jimmy Graham into that matter, strictly because...
Yep. No,
Not that he's going to put up the points that your number 1 wide receiver will, but he'll be close, but he's also just that much better than whatever else is there.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
So that's why I think, again, value-based, Jimmy Graham is, I think, a guy that definitely makes it the second round for me.
So we kind of touched on this. We touched on how long we're waiting on quarterback. I kind of said 6th to 8th round is where I'm targeting my quarterback. You sound like you're waiting a lot longer, though. You're waiting, 10th, 12th round, somewhere in there?
It could be. I mean, guys like Robert Griffin will be hard
Let's say
for
everybody.
me.
Let's just say everybody falls under their ADP. No one's falling. Brady isn't lasting till the 7th round. That type of thing.
Yeah.
Where are you taking your quarterback?
I would say probably no earlier than the 7th, 8th round. No earlier than probably 8th round. No earlier than the 8th round. If I went into a season, like I said, with Eli Manning as my number 1, I'd take Carson Palmer in the 12th round. I'd be okay with that team. I really would be, because I would be stacked, I think, in other positions.
Yeah,
I'm waiting probably longer than most, but I think with the depth at quarterback, the way the NFL is going today, there's so many points to be had, even if you're talking the 17th guy.
So, like I said, I'm going to that 6 to 8 range just because I want to hit that third tier of quarterbacks. The top tiers being those, Breeze and Rodgers and that type, and that second tier kind of being the Cam, Peyton, Brady range. I want to be hitting that third tier up, those high upside guys.
So
That's why
you're
I'm going
putting
6 to 8.
Ryan in the next,
Yes,
right after those guys. So he's like your third tier.
He's in the third tier for me.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised. In one of my leagues, actually, I saw Matt Ryan get drafted ahead of Tom Brady, and I thought that was crazy to me.
Yeah.
I'm not getting Matt Ryan that much.
The thing with Brady, obviously, is...
I understand the fear in Brady.
The concern.
But
who the hell is
Matt
he throwing
Ryan,
to?
though? I mean...
Yeah.
I'm just not a Matt Ryan believer. Moving on, though, to tight ends. How long are you... you're obviously... It sounds like you're all over Jimmy Graham early.
Right.
But let's say you don't get Jimmy Graham. How long are you waiting?
It could be a similar situation with my quarterback. I mean, I'm going to wait. If I don't get Jimmy Graham, and if I can't get Gronkowski in the 5th round, I don't even... It's going to be...
Yeah, for me, it's... I'd love to get Jimmy Graham. If I don't get Jimmy Graham, if I can get Gronk in the 4th, I'm doing that. If I can't get Gronk in the 4th, I think...
okay, I'll say 4th.
I think Vernon Davis is going to have a big year, especially if he lines up at wide receiver as much as they say he's going to.
Yep.
The only problem with Vernon Davis is almost guaranteed in every one of my leagues so far, someone before me is taking Vernon Davis higher than I'm willing to take him.
They're hearing
so
the
I'm
hype
not.
on...
Yeah, so I'm not getting Vernon Davis.
Right.
So, but basically, where a majority of my tight ends are being taken right now are that 12th and 13th round.
Right.
And I'm pairing up like Jordan Cameron with Rob Hausler.
Yep.
2 high upside guys where I hope one of them hits, and if neither one of them hit, I really don't care.
Pick up another one.
It's really not a big deal.
Right.
I mean, at that point, you're talking 12th and 13th round picks. Ironically, I think Jordan Cameron can have I'm not going to say similar season to Jimmy Graham did a few years ago when Jimmy Graham broke out, but I think Jordan Cameron has the chance to put up 75% of those numbers.
I gave some interesting stats on him not stats, but what tight ends have done in the past. So it's Cameron's a guy who's a freak athlete, never put it together on the field. There's a ton of question marks in the tight end position. Do you agree with me in second round Jimmy Graham, or is that a little
absolutely
high? Yeah,
no, that's where he's been going. He's been going almost the end of the first round in some drafts.
Yeah, yep.
If you can get him in the, I'm not going to go early second round on him because I'd still rather go running back. But if I can get him mid second round-ish, I would probably jump on him. Mm-hmm. It would be hard for me to draft him over MJD or Chris Johnson because I really like both of those guys this year in the second round.
Yeah.
So if both of those guys are still there, it's tougher for me, but I could see it. I mean, I could if I thought a decent wide running back was going to fall to the third round to me, I would do it. It really just depends on how well I know my league and everybody drafting in it and where I think people are going to fall.
Say Jimmy's sitting there. The running backs you like are off the board. Won't even.
Oh yeah, I mean if MGD and Chris Johnson are gone, he's my next pick.
What if AJ Green or Brandon Marshall or Des Bryant have not been picked yet?
AJ Green, no. Des Bryant, no. Brandon Marshall, maybe.
So you have Brandon Marshall. You're number 2.
Yes.
Okay.
But it just
is that the concern?
The depth at wide receiver. It just. I mean, there's so many of them.
Right.
I mean, I think there's a 60%, 70% chance that Demaryius Thomas becomes the number 1 wide receiver this year. You know what I mean? I think there's a decent chance somebody like that, maybe not number 1 because of Calvin, but let's say number 2. You know, he could beat out Marshall or AJ Green or that type of thing, and you can get Demaryius Thomas in the end of second, early third, mid third, that type of range. So when it comes to wide receivers in the second, I could see myself passing on Des Bryant, AJ Green to get my MJD just so I can get Demaryius Thomas in the third.
Well, like I was saying, forget the running backs are not on the board. You're going to take Jimmy Graham over every
I'll take Jimmy Graham over every one of them except
for
Calvin and maybe Brandon Marshall.
Yeah. So that at Brandon
Marshall, that's close. Like that's
flipping
real close.
Yeah. So what puts that just interests me? What makes you put Brandon over AJ Green? Is it the reports of the knee right now, or
no? It has nothing to do with that.
Really?
It has everything to do with how well Brandon Marshall does with Jay Cutler.
Yeah.
And a Mark Trestman offense where they're going to throw the ball even more.
Jeffrey is looking like a complete stud too, which I think is really going to help Brandon on the other side.
And that could be, but in that offense where you have somebody like Matt Forte who's better in the passing game really than the running game, I could see them putting up a Lions type offense where they throw the ball 700 times this year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, look at the Lions last year. They still ran the ball because you still have to run the ball to kind of keep people, on their toes.
Yep.
But I could see them throwing the ball 650, 700 times this year, in which case Brandon Marshall is going to be huge, and Alshon Jeffrey is going to be probably top 20, 25.
Well, what I mentioned him for was just the fact that Brandon's never played with a guy that's a significant threat at all on the other side of the field.
I still don't think it's a threat, though. The amount of times they're going to throw the ball is not
No.
going to be a threat.
I'm not saying a threat to his numbers. I'm saying a threat to the defense.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So this is going to be the first time from reports that I'm hearing that he's going to have a guy that's actually somebody you got to worry about on the other side. Obviously Brandon's going to be the number 1 threat for the defense and what they've got to try to control. But if Jeffrey is doing what they say he's doing, obviously he was a high draft pick. He's a very talented player. He's going to have to be accounted for, and I think that's going to help Brandon. So I can see Brandon being number 2. I have him 3, but
I don't think people realize too. Brandon Marshall in a PPR league, I think was within 20 or 25 fantasy points of Calvin Johnson.
Oh yeah, he's a stud in the reception department.
He had over 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns last year, while having over 100 catches.
Yep.
He was a machine last year, and I think he's going to put up
can't
similar.
Get worse, right? This year.
He could get worse, but I think he'll put up similar numbers, if not better.
Yeah.
It could get worse, but I doubt it. So defenses and kickers, just for everybody out there, me and Matt are totally in agreement with this.
Yeah, I already mentioned it earlier.
Last 2 rounds, guys. Don't take them sooner.
If you're loving your team and you want to and you've got the last pick of the 13th round, and you're in a 16th round, you want to get the jump on the tight defense, whatever. But I'm big. I don't think I ever have. I think I've always waited. Oh wait, no, not 13th. Sorry, 14th. I've always drafted my kicker and defense in 15 and 16.
Yeah,
always. I'm big on playing, and I think you're the same way. I play the matchups week to week. I'll drop my defense and pick up the guys that are playing. Who's the worst offense in that week. So
now I just have to say real quick, it is a little different if you're in those leagues where you're limited to the amount of pickups you have every year.
Absolutely.
I am in a couple leagues like that where you're limited in how many pickups you can have every year, and I am in a couple leagues where you just draft and that's your team for the year. In those cases, I do see picking an elite defense earlier, just because then you can't you can't stream the defenses like we always do and play the matchups every week.
Yeah, I think last year in our home league, I probably had 10 different defenses.
Easy.
Year, at least.
Easy. So a couple more, just a couple different strategies here. How do you feel about having 2 wide receivers on the same team? Before this news, say Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb, or Victor. I guess Victor Cruz and Hakeem Nicks. Those are still wide receiver 1 guys, but you know what I'm saying. Roddy White, Julio Jones.
Yeah.
Those guys are wide receiver 1s in themselves, but maybe lesser people. Like before the Macklin injury, Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Macklin. What is your thing about 2 wide receivers in the same team? Do you purposely stay away from that? Or are you still just doing best available, and if I wind up with people on the same team, so be it?
I'm doing best available. That's basically my biggest strategy when it comes to a draft. With mocking and all that, you can do the best you can to figure out what you want to target, but they don't go as planned always. So there's a couple trains of thought on that. You got the same 2 wide receivers on the same team. You're not going to get a 30-point day from both of them. That's almost impossible. You know what I mean? But
you're going to be a little bit more consistent, though, if you were starting both of them.
Exactly. That's my point. That's what I was going to say. You're going to be, a lot of it, too, depends on what the matchup is that offense is playing that day. I'm not going to
So you don't shy away from it?
No.
I was going to say, I kind of do shy away from it a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of understand why you
if I already have one guy on a team, and it's my pick, and I'm looking at the other wide receiver on that team or another guy, and they're pretty close in my book.
Okay,
I tend to go with the other guy. It's kind of like the tiebreaker.
Yep, that's fine.
I know, we should be looking at this on a case-by-case basis in a bubble, like just that guy and drafting, like you said, the best available. But I do let that affect me a little bit. Speaking of which, how do you feel about a quarterback and a wide receiver on the same team?
That's sometimes it's like, oh yeah, double points, you think, but what if your quarterback has a terrible day? And all accounts, a lot of chances your wide receiver is as well. So again, I don't look at what team they're on. I'm going to pick the best available player and let it play out. But I can see why you'd want to avoid that. For me, I'm going to do it. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I just draft, and if I end up with a quarterback and a wide receiver in the same team, so be it. If they're the best players available at that spot in the draft, then that's going to get me the most points every week. It doesn't matter, if they're on the same team or not. That's the best duo. That's going to get me the best points. So one last thing, since we just before we touch on PPR guys, I just want to ask you, what about bye weeks? Do you think about bye weeks at all when you're drafting? Does that play into your drafting at all?
Yeah, it slightly.
Really?
Say I have my running backs, my two running backs. I'd rather not have them on the same bye week, but then you get it out of the way. So, yeah, if we're talking,
I don't look at it at all.
No,
you look at that while you're drafting. You look and you're like, wow, I've already drafted LaShawn McCoy. I better not draft. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe
Monte Ball in the 4th because they're going to have the same bye week or something.
I wouldn't draft Monte Ball in the 4th.
Well, anyways, you know what I'm saying.
No, I hear you. The nice thing about having all those bye weeks is you get them out of the way. If they're all in the same week, kind of you got to throw away there. That's nice. You got the guys for the rest of the year. But
I never look at bye weeks.
Yeah,
so much can change before that bye week is so irrelevant.
It's like people picking, players based on their
strength
playoff matchups.
Yeah,
strength of schedule. You have no goddamn clue what the
defense is. You have a little bit of a clue.
Not really.
But you should not be drafting based on that.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all, because year to year,
everything changes
so much that you really, if you think you're going to get a leg up by doing that, you're crazy.
I hate people that, like you were just saying, can sit there and go, well, I'm going to draft this guy, and he has a bye week 10, but if I draft this other running back, he's going to have a bye week 10 as well. Do you know how much it's going to change before week 10?
You might even trade one of those guys.
You might not only trade them, but one of them could go out for the year. Yep. Exactly, and it's not going to matter. So you can't let that affect your drafting.
I'm going to go with you on that.
Same thing with quarterbacks. Yeah, same thing with quarterbacks when people are like, oh my god, I drafted my 2 quarterbacks and they have the same bye week. So you know what you do? The guy that you drafted as your second quarterback, you try to trade him if you can. You probably can't, so you dump him and you pick somebody up to fill in.
That's the only thing I think if you're going in, like earlier when I mentioned, say you're going into the season You've taken Flacco and Roethlisberger. Those are going to be the guys you're going to play matchups. I would rather not have them on the same bye. But like you said, there's so many out there in the waiver wire, depending on how deep your league is. It's not a 2-quarterback league that you're going to be able to drop a guy like Roethlisberger or Flacco and pick up a guy like a Freeman or whatever, and they're going to be pretty much the same guy.
Yeah, like I said, I don't like it. So moving on to PPR here. I mean, all these strategies we've kind of already gone over, I think pretty much stay intact. Obviously, wide receivers get a bump in PPR. How much of a bump do they get for you?
I don't know. What do you think? PPR is a bigger thing for you. I'm a lot bigger into the standard scoring. I haven't really
wide receiver. I mean,
PPR quite as much. But
I think for me, stud wide receivers get a big bump for me. I mean, like I've said, I'm a big running back guy.
Yep.
But in almost every one of my PPR leagues, I've been getting Brandon Marshall in the second round all day, every day.
Yeah.
Because that's just money in the bank. He is locked up for 100 receptions and 1,200 yards and a dozen touchdowns.
But then there's guys like Vincent Jackson. Does he really get a bump?
No, he doesn't. Of course not. So those guys,
the wide receiver is dependent on which wide receiver you're looking at.
Right. I think for me, the high volume wide receivers, those are the guys that get a bump. The guys that are going to get 80 plus receptions this year.
Right.
Those are the guys that get a bump. Everybody else doesn't to me.
Yep, I agree.
And really, for me, I mean, that's, I don't know, unless you got more in PPR, I think that's the only difference than what we've already kind of gone over.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I said, a guy like a Vincent Jackson doesn't get the bump because he's a big play, big yard, touchdown type, not really reception. A guy like a Wes Welker, obviously his situation has changed, but he's a guy who always got a big bump. Brandon Marshall, again, of course, 100 receptions, pencil it in. So guys like him
use
definitely
pencil. You like to use pencil so you can erase it later, don't you?
Yeah, use a pen. You're done. It's set.
Yeah, I know. It should be set. You should be set with Brandon Marshall and 100 receptions. All right, so moving on to Dynasty Leagues here. Matt and I both actually play in a Dynasty League together, so this will be pretty interesting. Young players versus older players. Let's say it's a new startup Dynasty League. How much do the younger player how much does that play into your drafting?
It's funny. I'm huge into Madden franchises, right? When I'm doing those, it's all young guys. But when I'm talking fantasy football, we're talking about maybe making some money. I'm very much the here and now. I'm a huge Lakers fan, same type of approach that they do. We can make things happen later. I'm very much, I want to win today. We'll see what happens tomorrow. And I think maybe you're a little bit of a different...
I like to grow my team.
Yeah,
I definitely like to grow my team.
I'm in the belief that I'm going to be able to win now and be good enough to make the changes when I need to. But
see, I hate in Dynasty Leagues getting stuck with the old... Like, the guys that are still good and you still want them on your team, but are old enough that you're like, man, I don't want to get stuck with this guy because I'm going to have nothing when he retires. Kind of like the Celtics this year, how they know, all right, Pierce is getting older, Garnett's getting older, let's trade him away to get something before we get nothing for him. That's kind of how I am.
Yep.
I'm in one league where I literally spent all last year trying to dump Michael Turner. He was still productive last year. He still got me to the championship game.
Yeah.
But he was a guy that I'm like, man, I got to dump him this year, otherwise I am getting nothing for him next year. And obviously that's true now because he doesn't even have an NFL team right now.
Free agent.
God, that reminds me. How big do you think he's gotten sitting on his couch eating cheese puffs all day?
That's so funny you say that because I was just wondering. I wonder who's had more whoopie pies this year, me or Michael Turner. I'm pretty sure it's been him.
Yeah, I don't know. You eat your fair share of whoopie pies.
Yeah, but Michael Turner, my God, I can't imagine what he must be. 300 pounds right now, sitting on his couch.
There's a reason why there's a reason why no one's calling him. Him and Eddie Lacy are sitting on a couch together.
Yeah,
breaking the couch first though.
Hey, Eddie Lacy's looking good. They're saying he doesn't need to lose weight.
All right, so Dynasty Leagues, like I said, I like to grow my team. I put more emphasis into the younger players that can be good. In fact, in a Dynasty League that I was in last year, I traded Adrian Peterson away for Justin Blackmon, Ahmad Bradshaw, and David Wilson.
Wow, you're crazy.
This was
fucking nuts.
This was pre 2,000 yard season. This was
after. I don't care if it's pre. That's a terrible trade.
That's nuts.
How's that working out for you?
That's working out great. Are you kidding me?
What?
I got Justin Blackmon. I got Ahmad Bradshaw. I got David Wilson. I took Ahmad Bradshaw and I flipped him into Deshaun Jackson and a first-round pick, and that first-round pick ended up being Zach Ertz. So
God, that's hideous.
For Adrian Peterson
all day long.
Yeah, but you got to realize
he's going to pass Emmitt Smith. Didn't you see that? He said it the other day.
Jesus. He also
by 2017.
He also thinks he's going to have a couple of 2,000-yard seasons left in him.
No, I know, but
I mean, think about that. For Adrian Peterson, and a running back who's still definitely in his prime, but getting a little bit older, I was able to pick up Justin Blackmon, David Wilson, Deshaun Jackson, Zach Ertz. I mean, that's a pretty good haul.
Sure, but like I said, guys, stick by me. Win now, worry about tomorrow later. That's the way you do a dynasty league.
All right, so auction leagues. What's your strategy for auction leagues? Do you like to throw the good players out first that you don't care about? Like for me, that would be the Alfred Morrises of the world. Somebody that I know I'm gonna throw up there, and people are gonna bid like crazy on him, and he's gonna go for a high dollar amount right off the bat, and it's good because I didn't really care about him.
Yep.
Or are you the type of guy that puts up the players you want first so that you get them right off the bat and you know what your team is going to look like throughout the draft?
I'm going to put up the guys that I don't want first because I'm smarter than everybody else in my league. They're going to spend their money.
That was the best joke all night.
They're going to spend their money, and then I'm going to have my money to spend on what I really want. I know what I want going into a draft, an auction draft. You know, obviously, you know the players that are big on your list. So that's how I do it. What do you do?
Yeah, I do the same thing. I throw out guys that I know are gonna cost a lot,
yep,
and people that I don't care about.
And because I love your name with Alfred Morris. He'd probably be the first running back I throw out there. I'm not big on him this year
because I know he's gonna go for $45-$50 in a 300 cap league or a 200 cap league. He'll go for big money, and he's a guy that I do not want on my teams because I honestly think last year was his ceiling. I think that's the best you will ever see out of Alfred Morris.
I agree.
He doesn't catch the ball, and I'm not going to spend a first or second round pick on a guy that's one-dimensional like that. And he has to get you the rushing yards because it doesn't happen always.
That team falls behind, count him out.
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, I'm with you. I throw out that I don't like to warrant high dollar amounts so that later on I still have all my auction money left and I can just pick off all the $10 and $20 and $30 guys that I love, all the high upside guys. That's my strategy for that. So moving on, 2 quarterback leagues. I'm not in any of these leagues, but I've definitely mocked a few. Matt, have you had any experience in 2 quarterback leagues?
I've never participated in one myself, but obviously it makes the quarterbacks move up quite a bit.
It makes them move up like crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because in this one, if you wait on quarterback and you're on the wrong end of quarterback, now your starters are E.J. Manuel and Mark Sanchez.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It'll kill you in a hurry.
There's other leagues out there that have the flex position can be your quarterback. There's all that stuff, and in those type of leagues, 2 quarterback leagues, absolutely. I'm totally wiping away my idea and our idea of dropping, letting the quarterbacks fall. It's a total change when that happens.
Absolutely. If you're in 2 quarterback leagues, you have to come out of those first 3 rounds with your 2 quarterbacks. If you don't, you are going to be hurting at that second quarterback.
I don't know if you have to be the first 3.
Yeah,
but
you should. You haven't mocked them in a while. Then you see.
Yeah.
I mean,
they go quick. I imagine.
Oh my god, it's ridiculous. I mean, by the end of the 3rd round, you've gone through about 18 quarterbacks.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you.
So when you're talking 4th round and you're to the 19th, 20 best quarterbacks, it's looking real bad real fast. I made the mistake in a league this year of waiting on quarterback a little bit too long because I got blinded by the Brandon Marshalls and the Arian Fosters and that type of people that were falling. And it really, really just screwed me. So my suggestion would be, those first 3 rounds, come away with at least 2 quarterbacks. That somewhere in there, take a running back, maybe a wide receiver, preferably a running back. But those first 3 rounds, you got to come away with the two quarterbacks. So, talking more about quarterbacks here, in 6 points per passing touchdown leagues, how does that move up quarterbacks for you?
It certainly does, and it will take guys like Cam Newton, the running guys, and it drops them for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I want a guy who's going to put up the touchdowns in the passing department. They're going to move up a little bit. Of course, running quarterbacks like Cam Newton, that still counts for a touchdown, but obviously if you're getting those 2 extra points out of the guys like Breeze and Rodgers and Brady, I think the guys that are the big running quarterbacks take a fall, and certainly your quarterbacks move up. So think about it though. On average, say your quarterback's 30 touchdowns, he's getting an extra 60 points. It's a pretty good amount. So they're going to move up for sure for me. They're not going to fall quite as far, but still the depth is there at that position, so they're still going to fall for me.
See, I think for me, 6 points per passing touchdown leagues are much like 16-team fantasy leagues. I take my quarterback early, and it's got to be in the first couple rounds. Because I really think in those first 2 rounds, if you lose out on one of those elite guys, you're really going to feel the hurt of it. Both in the 6-point leagues, you're going to feel the hurt because if you lose, like you said, 5 touchdowns. If you get somebody who gets 5 less touchdowns, that's 30 fantasy points. That's 2.5 points or so a week that you're losing out on, 2 points a week. And then in the 16-team leagues, the thing that worries me about those is at some point, at least one of those 16 teams is going to have a guy around that 15, 16 quarterback range. That's going to be your starter. And that would scare the hell out of me,
Yeah.
Because at that point, you really can't stream quarterbacks. So for me, I want to get an elite guy and stick with the elite guy because, God, I do not want to be on the wrong end of a quarterback run in a 16-team league. I don't want to draft my second running back in the second round, not have a pick for another 25 picks, and see 10 quarterbacks magically go. And now I'm just like, holy shit, I missed out on that one. So I think both of those I kind of treat the same for me. I take quarterbacks early. I can't. I hate to be on the wrong side of waiting on those, especially whereas quarterbacks are so much more valuable. So moving on to best ball formats. If you're not familiar with best ball is basically you don't set a lineup every week. The website will do it for you based on your optimum, starting lineup. Basically, they'll put in your running backs, your quarterbacks, and your wide receivers after they've all played with whoever would have scored you the most points in those positions. So for me, that's kind of what we were talking about earlier in late drafts, only all the time. I take high upside guys basically the whole draft because if you have a guy bomb, that's okay because he's going to automatically be replaced by somebody. So those guys like Julio Jones, where you could have you 20 points one week and then 2 points the next, you really don't feel the 2-point drops because it'll optimize it for you and it'll automatically take him out and put somebody else in. What do you think, Matt?
I hate these leagues. I really do. I think half the fun is, analyzing the matchups week to week and deciding who you need to play and hoping you're correct, and then seeing the guy on the bench that goes off and you wanting to punch yourself.
Half of the fun is that, but
yeah.
How many times have you wanted to strangle somebody when, like last year, you start Jamal Charles and Romeo Crennel is just an idiot and only gives him 5 carries, so he only gets you 1 or 2 points. Meanwhile, the guy that you're playing against starts somebody like Sean Green, who plunges in for 2 1-yard touchdown runs. And Sean Green gets 12 points, and Jamal Charles gets you 1 or 2.
Right.
Then you just want to go out and just shoot somebody.
That's the fun of fantasy. It's called.
That's not the fun of fantasy. That's the bullshit of fantasy.
That's the fun of fantasy. It makes it, week to week, it's tough. But I agree. High upside guys, of course, because those guys that can have those big weeks, you want as many of them as you can on your roster. Because at any week they could go off, and with this type of a draft, with this type of a league, those points are going to count. Whether you've started them, you've had them on the bench, it's all the same thing. So high upside is absolutely the way to go with that type of a format. A format I'm not a big fan of at all.
Yeah. All right, so guys, make sure to always follow me and Matt on Twitter. Follow me at Marcus Katkin and Matt at Matt Dugal. Make sure to keep sending your questions to #BlindsidePod. We got quite a few questions, it looks like, this week, so we're going to run down the list here. And this time, at Matt's request, I did write down their Twitter handles to give them a shout-out.
All right.
So those people won't just feel like, hey, these guys don't really care about us.
Or
so,
how did everyone know we're not just making up questions to make people think, hey, we have fans?
Now you gave it away. You gave away the secret.
We'll confirm this at something about FT Ball. He's a real person, so we got a question.
At something about football asks, what are some training camp news that owners should not buy into, and what are some they should buy into?
Don't buy into the fact that Riley Cooper is not racist, because clearly No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, I'll let you answer that first.
I think people are too quick to overanalyze preseason games and training camp
Camp
things.
especially.
Oh my!
It's unbelievable.
I don't know about you, but I was watching my Twitter while I was watching the Dolphins-Cowboys game the other night, and as soon as Lamar Miller had that fumble on the first carry, everybody in Twitter land was like, he just dropped around in ADP, at least one round, maybe two. I literally was watching people type stuff like, how high do you bump Daniel Thomas now? Blah, 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 blah. Guys, calm down. It's one carry. I understand the worry, I guess, a little bit if he gets in the doghouse. But then if you watched it, he had 2 more carries that game, and both of them were for over 10 yards. So, I mean, just as quickly as these people were like, oh my God, this is terrible. I'm not going to pick him till the 5th round. I swear to God, 5 minutes later, those same people were like, oh my God, yep, he's 3rd round talent right there. Look at him run. He is so explosive. So I think people are just way too quick to buy into, the little bit you see in preseason. And I think a lot of people buy into, those 3rd string guys that come out of preseason with 20 receptions in 4 games.
Right.
And they're like, oh my God, this guy is going to break out this year. No, it's because he's playing against 3rd string guys. They're giving him more time so they can see him, to see the guy develop, to see if there's somebody that they want to keep a roster spot for.
Yep.
It has nothing to do with that guy being part of the game plan for this year. So for me, it's don't buy into that hype. Stick with the guys that that are proven. What you should buy into for me is depth chart. Depth chart is huge for me. Last year, paying attention to the depth chart, I saw Alfred Morris be pretty much named the starter before week 1. So I think like 2 days before Sunday, I think it was Friday or something, I went and I picked him up, and obviously he was a dominant factor last year, and I picked him up off a waiver wire right before week 1.
Yeah, that was because I had just recently dropped him.
Wow,
about the day before.
I think this goes back to the.
But you're right.
I think this goes back to the genius we talked about earlier.
You're right, though. Depth chart is definitely a big thing. I think for a few specific examples, don't buy into the Eddie Lacy pictures floating around there with his gut hanging out. A lot of reports are that he is really, really taking off in camp, doing an outstanding job. Pictures can. Look at me. I don't look gorgeous in every one of them, most of them, but not every one of them. So
we'll be posting Matt's swimsuit pic later.
You get the angles and all that kind of stuff. Don't buy into the fact that Eddie Lacy is fat. One thing you can buy into, I think, some of the reports out of New England, Zach Sudfeld, the tight end, Ballard is struggling, and I think that's an offense that structures around tight ends. There's really nothing else there. He's a tall guy. That's an athletic player.
6'7".
Yeah, a name that just keep an eye on him. There's reports out of camp about him looking good, and that they're still featuring him in some of the scrimmages in the passing attack. So there's a guy that I'd buy into. But like I said, Eddie Lacy, don't buy into that. I think he's still going to be the man there. There's so many things that come out of camp. Not much exciting happens. There aren't a ton of games going on currently right now, so they need to find stories. That's what the media does. It's tough to buy into it. Just kind of take it all, totality of the circumstances, kind of pick out what you want, and ask us questions if you got questions about it.
Yeah, speaking of questions, more questions here. At Gonzo Knox sends us a question. 10-team PPR. It's start 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and 2 flexes. So I guess his question is, he wants to wait on quarterback to fill out on his depth because of all the potential starters. I mean, between the flex positions, running back and wide receiver, you're starting 7 positional players.
Crazy.
So he thinks after keepers, the guy with Kaepernick is going to probably back him up with Wilson as his guess. The guy with RG3 is going to try to back him up. And there's one other team in his league that is going to not keep a quarterback like he is. So from what he can see, Kaepernick, Luck, Stafford, and Romo will be available. He's thinking about waiting on quarterback and either doing, an Eli Manning, Big Ben quarterback by committee, or maybe taking Romo a little bit before that, and maybe following it up with a high upside guy like Cutler or Tannehill. Is he asking for pain if he waits on quarterback this long?
No, I mean, we've already talked about that plenty today. It's funny he mentioned those 2, Eli and Big Ben by committee. That's actually what I did in our home league last year. I ran those 2 guys and had an outstanding year at the quarterback position.
Roethlisberger was better than people think.
Yeah.
Like, he did all right.
I'm a big fan of Romo this year, but I think if you went into a season with an Eli Big Ben combination, you're going to be absolutely fine. I think there's a chance that out of those two guys, more likely Eli, you might get a top 7 quarterback out of those two.
For me, if you're waiting long enough that you're going to end up with Romo, then I'd rather just wait and get Eli and Big Ben.
And I think with a team like this, like you said, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 2 flex, a lot of position players. That waiting on quarterback is even bigger for me in that type of league because I need to fill out those other positions, and I know I can get a guy like Eli late or Big Ben late that I feel confident enough with at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and he also has a tight end question for us, just saying how long is too long to wait on tight end. And I think we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but he says he's eyeing Bennett and Myers. Or maybe some of the upside guys a little bit later on, like Jordan Cameron, Rob Hausler, and Dustin Keller. How do you feel about Martellus Bennett and Brandon Myers?
I like them both.
You just like everybody, don't you?
Tight end's just so hard to pinpoint. Like I said, if you're not getting
that's just it for
Graham,
me. For me, it's
then
just
wait.
For me, it's just if you're already
or
looking
Gronk
at
in round 4, like you said earlier.
Yeah, for me, it's just if you're looking at Bennett or Myers, I'm just waiting a couple more rounds and, like he said, taking Cameron and Hausler.
Yeah, and you know what? Say week 1 comes around and Martellus Bennett gets a target, drop him. Pick up Cameron, who gets 5 targets that week, or maybe Hausler, who gets 7. You got to really play the wire with tight ends this year. Really see what's happening with the targets, where those targets are happening. You're not going to know week 1. Hopefully, the preseason is going to make things a little clearer for the tight end position, but I think there's such a huge group of guys that are the same player currently that it's hard to really. For me, when I do my rankings in tight end, I'm ranking them, of course, but if you put a gun to my head, I would have no clue. For a big group of those guys, they're all very similar. So,
I totally agree that after those first couple tight ends, everybody's all pretty much the same.
Yeah, I agree.
For me, I mean, the difference between those guys is going to be so minimal. I'm just going to wait and wait and wait and wait.
So he's fine with waiting, and some of the names he threw out there to us: Bennett, Myers, Cameron, Hausler. We mentioned earlier. He mentioned Keller. Those are guys that they're all on my radar. Maybe not Keller as much, but they're all on my radar. So we'll see what happens as the year goes on.
Yeah.
I think you're fine to wait quite a while. Take any one of those guys, and then see what happens.
And by the way, he said he is taking our advice from last week and he's going to keep Trent Richardson, McCoy, and Demaryius Thomas, which I think are 3 great guys to be keeping.
Of course he's going to take our advice. Why wouldn't he?
Yeah. If he was, we weren't going to read his question. I mean, that's really what it came
there
down to. So at Megatron FF, he's actually one of our writers for Blindside, kind of threw out a question here. He says, for early picks, if you had the first, second, or third pick in the draft, what positions would you target in the turn of rounds 2 and 3, assuming you took a running back in the first? Which, first of all, let me just say, if you have one of the first 3 picks, you're definitely taking your running back.
Oh, yeah.
If you're taking a wide receiver or a quarterback, you should just be shot now.
Yeah, quick. Give your position up.
Ironically, and I do have to admit to this, I joined in my fantasy league, actually with at Megatron FF, and 4for4, I'm going to screw this up, I think it's 4for4 John, not 4for4 Josh, one of the 2 owners from the at 4for4.com website, and at Megatron FF kind of said to me, he's like, man, it's going to be a good group with all of us guys, and I kind of wrote back saying, well, sometimes I feel bad about taking your money, and then it passes. And then I had the 3rd pick in the draft, and I meant to take Jamal Charles, and I screwed up, and I accidentally hit Calvin Johnson. So, yeah, big blunder right off the bat.
Just listed next to each other?
They're right next to each other, and I saw the C and the J, and I'm like, click, click, yep, I'm so happy I got Jamal Charles. Oh, shit. That was definitely not who I wanted.
Clearly a mistake.
But other than a mistake like that, you should not be taking a wide receiver or a quarterback in the top 3.
And if that happens, you need to run straight to the commissioner's house before the next pick happens.
Oh, I already posted on the message board just saying, oh my god, I'm an idiot. I can't believe I did that, guys. I totally meant to take Charles, who immediately went in the 4th pick.
If you're 1 and 3 and it wraps around...
So what are you taking? What do you...
Damn good chance.
Let's answer this.
If Calvin's not available, it's probably going to be...
Of course Calvin's not available.
Right, so it's probably going to be... I'm taking Jimmy Graham, I'm thinking.
Graham's gone by then. Graham's way gone by then.
But when you wrap around...
second and third, 23rd and 24th and 25th pick overall. They're both way gone, guy.
So I'm going with another running back.
Well, you going running back on both picks, though?
Yeah.
You're going to go take 3 running backs right off the bat?
Oh, 2 and 3. Okay. No.
What are you not paying attention?
No, I didn't. I didn't. I don't know why I didn't see. So 2 and 3. Yeah. Second. This is so hard to pick. I'd have to see what happened before me, but most likely it's running back.
Assume every running back after, say, MJD is gone. He's like the last
Going into round 3.
going into the second end, going into that turn. MJD and all the people ranked before him are gone.
Uh-huh.
Wide receiver wise, Marshall, AJ, Dez, and Calvin are all gone. So who you taking 2 and 3? That gets real tough real fast.
So you're saying round 2, MJD is already gone.
Because we're talking the end of the second round. Is he had the first pick over? Couple picks overall.
It's going to be wide receiver. There's no running backs at that level that I'm confident in today. We're talking a couple preseason games.
McFadden?
No, I hate McFadden. He's done enough for me.
Let's bust out your rankings. I just got your rankings a little bit earlier. Let's just check this out real quick. We'll throw some names out here. All right, so we're going to assume all these rankings. So no Frank Gore.
No.
You wouldn't take Frank Gore.
No.
Stephen Ridley.
No.
Really?
He's close. That's a good spot to start. Who did I have after him?
After him, you had Frank Gore, and you said no.
Right.
Darren McFadden, you said no.
Right.
DeMarco Murray, you said no. Well, you didn't say no, but he's lower on your rankings.
No, too many question marks out of them. I like Stephen Ridley obviously better than all
I think
those guys.
Stephen Ridley I would take. Let's take a look at your wide receiver rankings here to see who you're going to throw in at wide receiver. So we're going to say the top 4. We're going to say the top 5 guys are gone. I'm going to say Demarius is gone too. Larry Fitz.
I love him this year.
We're going to say Julio's gone too. You don't have Julio in your top 5. I'm going to say he's gone too. I got to tell you, Larry Fitz has been lasting to the 3rd round. I am all over him.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm going to take him as well.
So, I think
I love Larry
if you can come away with, your Arian Foster, your AP, those first couple picks, and then you can combine it with Stephen Ridley and Larry Fitz, that's looking pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very excited about Larry Fitzgerald this year. Obviously, last year was a hideous year for him, but
I love him this year.
Yeah, and it's right along with the line of Carson Palmer. I have ranked higher than a lot of other people do, and I think it's going to be a great connection with those two.
I'm taking Fitz in the 3rd round of every league that I'm drafting in.
Yep.
It's just
if he's there in the 3rd round, no question about it. I'm taking him in round 3 for sure.
I would even take him in the 2nd round if I didn't think I could get him in the 3rd, but I think I can get him in the 3rd in most leagues. But moving on to more questions. At Memphis Falcon 1 says, if I go running back through my first 3 picks, is Lamar Miller a good pick as my 3rd running back, even if Gore, David Wilson, and Reggie Bush are still there, assuming a 10-team league with standard scoring?
This goes back to my point I made earlier where you can go into a draft like this kid here, I'm going to take running backs in the first 3 picks. That's your strategy. But when it comes to the 3rd round and you're thinking Lamar Miller, there are so many players.
I gotta tell you, I was down on Miller and watched. I know he had minimal carries the other night.
2 carries. What are you gaining from that? I know I think he's a talented
explosive
player. I know. That's why I had him on my roster last year.
Adam Schefter did tweet out that there are people in the Dolphins camp that are worried. They're concerned about Lamar Miller.
We're talking today. But
I think if they saw Daniel Thomas or Mike Gillislee as their leading running back, they would understand why they want Lamar Miller in there. He looked explosive in those 2 other plays other than that fumble.
Yeah. And the fumble, whose fault is it? Is it his? Is it the quarterback? Is it Tannehill's? It's tough to gauge that. It's early. Those things are going to come.
No, that was his fault. That was totally his fault. It hit him in the chest.
I agree.
It hit him in the chest.
For me, we're talking today, Lamar Miller is just too much of a question mark. Now, do I think he's going to be the starter and have a very good year? Yes, but I'm not 100% positive on that. If I'm talking 3rd round, I don't want to draft a big question mark like that today. If we're three preseason games in, he's clearly the man, 100%, which I'm pretty sure he is. I don't know. It scares me. There's other guys in the 3rd round, like a Larry Fitzgerald, that I'd rather have over Lamar Miller every day.
Let's Let's just stay with running backs for a second because it looks like he really wants to go with 3 running backs.
Okay.
Out of those guys...
Well, he's got a list there. Gore, Wilson,
yeah,
Bush.
I'm saying out of those guys, out of Miller, Gore, Wilson, and Bush, how do you rank them?
I don't know. You got the rankings in front of me, right?
Yeah, I know, but I'm asking you on the spot.
I hope I go with my rankings here.
Putting you on the spot. I want to see if you're holding true to your rankings.
I'm going to go, out of those guys, I'm going to go Gore,
Yeah.
Miller, Wilson, Bush.
You went Gore, Wilson, Bush, Miller. You had Miller the lowest.
Wow, okay.
And those are the ones you just handed me.
Yeah,
Looks
that's
like they already need
They
updating.
updated as of this morning, right? I woke up and changed my mind.
I think for me, even in standard scoring, I gotta go Gore just because of his track record.
Yep.
Bush, even though I hate him, and then Miller, and then Wilson.
Yep.
And I think that's how I would put them.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with you. I'll make an adjustment to my rankings.
You gotta stop agreeing. This makes for bad radio.
Well, I agree with you on the fact of all of them because, like you said, Gore, the track record. Yeah, it scares me a little bit. They're talking about, and they have been last year. They want to make sure he's ready for the playoffs. They're kind of taking back some carries from him, but because of track record. Then Wilson is a similar situation as Lamar Miller, although I think Lamar Miller has a faster track to
way
the
faster.
clear-cut guy. Because
Right.
I think Andre Barron's a very talented running back, and I don't think they have quite that situation in Miami behind Miller. So Bush, so much up in the air. I have good visions for him as far as out of the backfield. A lot of receptions, I think, out of him.
Yeah, and standard scoring, though, I mean, he's not as sexy.
Yeah, but still, the explosiveness is there. The yards after catch in that offense is just they throw the football, and that's what he does well. They're 4 good guys there.
They're all very, very
I'm not
close.
taking any one of those 3 in the 3rd round, though. For me, maybe Gore.
And like we always say,
Out
our
of those 4.
rankings are our rankings. If you have one of these guys ranked higher, then you pick the guy that you like.
Yep.
Don't always go with what we want. Pick who you want. It's your league. Pick the guy you're going to be happy with.
But I think we both agree Gore. I would probably go with Gore there.
Yeah, just safer.
But Miller has a higher upside.
Yes. At Legend Donnelly asks, what rounds do you take Luck, Kaepernick, Russell Wilson, and RG3?
Good group of guys to put together there.
I think this goes along with what Matt's been saying this whole podcast. It kind of goes with where are people falling in your draft. If people are waiting on quarterback and waiting, then you get to wait a little bit longer on these guys. I think it's all relative.
Yeah. I think as soon as you see, say your league values the first guy taken is Wilson. Say the first guy taken is Luck, Kaepernick, RG3. As soon as you see that guy go off the board, that's all in the same little
They're
group.
all going to go on the same
They're
round.
all going to go within the next probably 10, 15 picks. So you need to make sure if those are the guys you're jumping on, next pick, hopefully you're going to get it in.
I think if I had to pick a round, if I'm setting my draft plan ahead of time,
6 through 9, roughly.
yeah, I was gonna say 6th might be a little bit too high just because of the
Yeah.
way things have been falling lately. With
7th,
Brady
maybe.
falling as far as he has,
Right.
So I'm gonna say 7th, 8th round is where you should probably be planning on taking one of these guys.
Yep.
Like you said, depending on which one you like, do you want one to go off the board first? So you know when the run of them is gonna go. When the run of them starts, though. Once one of these guys is taken, the other guys are typically taken within the next 6 to 8 picks. So once you see one go, you got to jump on it and take one. So then he asks, what about Matt Ryan and Matthew Stafford? What rounds would you take them in? Here's my thought on Matt Ryan and Matthew Stafford. The drop from Brady to Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford tier, and then to the guys we just mentioned.
Yeah.
I think drafting wise, they're all very close. Like they're all going around this, right around a similar territory.
Right. 6 through
If I miss
8,
out
9.
on Brady, then I would rather pass on Ryan and Stafford because they're probably going in the 6th round, and I would rather wait till the 7th or 8th to take those guys we just mentioned.
Right.
I just think there's more value there waiting a round or two later.
Yeah, you're going to be able to fill your wide receiver at that level with some very good players in the 6th, 7th round that Stafford and Ryan are going.
Yeah. I think if you want to take one of those two guys, it's the 6th round. That's where you have to target them.
Yeah.
I'm I wouldn't recommend it, but I think that's where you'd have to.
Clearly, I think those guys are ahead of them, but like you said, we're talking about a value situation. You're going to be able to take them a few rounds later. You're going to be able to shore up another position. And I don't think there's a big difference, huge difference, between those guys that you mentioned earlier and the Stafford and the Ryans of the world.
All right, so the last question, also by Legend Donnelly, just asks, does the loss of the Falcons starting right tackle affect where Steven Jackson is drafted?
I won't even lie and tell you that I care about that. That's not a very good offensive line there in Atlanta. And Michael Turner, as terrible as he is, still got it done last year. He was effective. I think Steven Jackson is worlds above him as far as the talent level. It doesn't
affect where I think he's drafted at all. To be honest, I don't think I'm going to end up with Steven Jackson on a lot of my teams because I think he's going to be drafted. Somebody in my league is going to like him more than me.
Yeah.
He's still 30, and he's still on a pass-first team. And he's still, like as you said to your point, on a team with a bad offensive line.
Yeah, and Jacquizz Rodgers is there.
There's
a good
just
player.
I
think he's certainly going to have one of his best seasons as far as touchdowns.
He's going to have the most rushing touchdowns this year than he's ever had.
I agree. Yep.
Bar none.
Yep. He's finally on an offense that can move the football.
I think he's going to get 200 carries this year, and that's it.
Oh, I think it's going to be more than that.
I don't think it's going to be 250. Yeah. I don't think it's 225.
I think 250 is going to be where he's at. I think he's going to have a 1,300-yard type season, 10 touchdowns. And he's going to be a factor in the passing game. I know they throw the ball a lot, but he's very capable.
I think 250 touches is possible. I think 250 carries is too many. 250 carries would be 15 a game.
They are, like you said, yes, a big passing offense, but he's very capable out of the backfield. Always has been. Picks up blitz as well. He's a veteran who reads the defense outstanding. Plus, he's got hands. I can
see the Falcons' offense giving him 12 to 13 carries a game, which puts him around the 200 mark that I was saying, and they give Jacquizz 6.
I'm in the 15 to 20 range with Steven for carries. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, he's a bell cow.
I will bet money on that right now.
All right,
I'll put 5 on that right now.
Do it up.
Jesus, that is
15
crazy.
to 20 on average will be his per game carries.
We got to pick a number then. We got to say 17 and a half.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you're saying 15 to 20.
Sure. Cut it right down.
I'll give you 17. Let's say 17 carries.
17 carries a game.
17 carries a game. You think he's going to average?
Steven Jackson.
No, I think it's.
I love that number.
I'm taking the under. All right, so finally, we just want to wrap this up. A couple months ago, we started doing the Blindside, the hashtag Blindside Help Maddie, kind of helping out the hashtag FF Help Maddie for Lad Davies and his daughter that needed a diabetic alert dog. We said that we were going to pick somebody to kind of join our Blindside Fantasy Football Staff Fantasy League. We have our winner. The winner is Jonathan Smith. At Twitter, he is at SJonathan02. So, Jonathan, we're going to be contacting you on Twitter. You get your entry into our football league this year, which is being hosted by My Fantasy League. Just want to say we're going to give out another entry into the league next week on the next podcast to get entered into the contest, to be entered into our fantasy league and play with all the Blindside staff writers. Just tweet out a link to this podcast. And again, use the hashtag BlindsideHelpMaddie so that we can kind of track everybody that's tweeted out the podcast and kind of put you guys all in a running so you can be in our fantasy league with us this year and kind of play alongside all the Blindside people.
One quick question. Jonathan Smith in the rankings, what do you think? That is the most common name in the history of the world, or
I actually have
top 5?
I actually have a friend named Jonathan Smith.
John Smith. Congratulations, John Smith. There's only 7 billion other ones of you out there.
Hey, it was either John or Muhammad. Why Muhammad? Because that's the most common name.
Yeah, that's true.
McLovin style. But congratulations, Jonathan. And like I said, we're going to pick another person next week. So make sure you tweet out a link to this podcast and use the hashtag BlindsideHelpMaddie to get entered in. And I guess that does it, man, unless you got anything else.
No, that's about it. Again, sorry about the voice. I know it might be a little hard to hear me through the piles of, well, never mind, but been fun. We'll see you guys next week.
Yo, check it. It's my time. I'm rapping about Blindside Fantasy Football Podcast in this rhyme because they got me
The inside scoop on Adrian Peterson. Yeah, he's that dude on Cam Newton. Yeah, they give me the news more on Megatron Calvin Johnson if I stay tuned. On all quarterbacks, RG3 happens to be the fastest QB in the league. In fact, Colin Kaepernick is rider QB for them 49ers. It ain't hard to see, Some awesome people hosting Marcus Katkin and Matt Dugal. You should be joining. Skinny or fat, short or tall, anyone can tune in to Blindside football. Have a try, dude. Listen on.